On episode 115, I'm delighted to be joined by All-Star, former Player of the Year and All-Ireland winner with Kerry Footballers, Kieran Donaghy. Kieran is also an accomplished basketball player, winning Super League and National Cup titles with Tralee Warriors and formerly Tralee Tigers. In this episode we discuss his playing career across both codes, coaching with Armagh, improving as an individual and so much more. I hope you enjoy. Before we begin the episode, I'd like to thank our long-standing sponsor and friend of the podcast, Chin Up Goggles. An Irish-owned business, Chin Up Goggles is the new generation of vision training. Their simplistic design eliminates downward vision, thus improving a player's spatial awareness, anticipation, skill acquisition and execution. The findings have been supported by scientific research in CIT, now MTU. You can visit chinupgoggles.com for more information. Hi Kieran, thanks a million for joining me on the podcast.
No problem, good to be here.
We're going to get into everything, but I suppose it's first day in February, but we're right in the thick of the first week of the Alliance League. As a player, as a coach, is it still as exciting, starting off the new season? What's it like?
Oh yeah, it's really exciting. It's I think there's such a long gap now between the inter-county seasons. You used to finish maybe in August or September and you'll be back at it in November in pre-season, but I think the gap now in the seasons with the club season taking real prominence throughout the kind of into the summer and the winter months. It's great that the leagues are back and there's excitement and the divisions are tight, and look probably for the fans going to games, bar the weather, they're the most exciting games because teams are paired against each other so well and the level of competition is so tight, and there's drama in all four divisions already in the first week. So yeah, really good to be back and looking forward to it.
Does anything replace playing intercounty football? Does coaching kind of come near that exciting bug of it, or is it kind of irreplaceable?
For me, it's like you're in kind of like I was in the panel year one back in 2004. It's you're a rookie again. You're learning. Yes, you're a coach, and yes, you're trying to help the team. But in your own development, in your own head, you're very much at the start process. So very much like being a first or second year player into a squad. You're feeling your way through it and trying to learn and trying to get better, to hopefully help your team. So yeah, but it's nothing. Unfortunately, can replace getting out there and being able to express yourself and being able to express a whole range of emotions in one game where you have to be quite restrained as a coach or a manager, and whereas in a game, that white heat, that madness of championship battle, and I don't think there's anything really that can beat it.
Yeah, completely. You're 39, I think, is it now?
I am 39, yes.
How are you still playing Super League and how are you managing it?
Look, I think it's a kind of, I suppose it's a love for the game in terms of the basketball. The obvious and easy thing for me to do at this stage of my basketball career is just stop. But the fact is, I love it too much. It's I get too much out of too much of a buzz out of it. It keeps me fit. I'd much prefer to go to basketball Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday than to try and haul myself down to a gym and get on a treadmill. Like, I couldn't actually think of anything worse. So it's all those things, but really it's the love of the game and the enjoyment and that competitive edge. You're trying to feed that competitive edge all the time, and it'd be probably my biggest weakness is trying to feed that. And certainly at Super League basketball and the level that the league has been at and has risen over the last few years to the point where it is now, where teams are beating each other so regularly, it's hard to get shape nor make to the league, and it's just so competitive with so many good teams, so many good players, and you're knocking on the door of 40, but you're still trying to compete with these guys, and you're still trying to improve as a basketballer. And I can even see bits of improvement from myself since the start of the season, and that's always kind of encouraging. And it comes with playing a bit more. The start of the season, I still had the stack stuff going on, and but yeah, no, I'm able to work it fine. I'm in Dublin with PST with work one day a week, and I go up to Armagh and do the training after that. And I have a sister that lives in Kildare, and I come down, get to see her and her family and stay there. And then I do the basketball on the Tuesday or the Thursday, whatever opposite night that I'm above there is, and And I had a bit of a mix last week. I had the Armagh Monaghan game the same time that Owen Quigley and Daniel Jacobitis threw the touchdown pass for Quiggs to win the game against Ballincollig. So that was a tough one to miss, but obviously when the boys pull it out of the bag, it makes it all a bit easier.
Absolutely. When you mentioned the league has improved in terms of standard, what certain area is it that you've seen improvement in? Is there a couple of different areas, but what is that improvement kind of, when we get into the thick of things for the basketball community listening now, like what are the things you can see that have improved from, let's say go back to maybe 2015, or you can pick a timeline that you've seen?
Yeah, so like obviously I've played in the league for the last 21 years, and I took a gap out for a few years in the middle when the Tigers folded in 2009. And I suppose the concentration at that stage had to really focus in on Kerry. Um, but I would say the athletic ability of players, has really come on. Maybe that might be me just older now and struggling to keep up with them, but I don't know. But it is a huge thing. The level of athletic ability there is in the league. We've so many Irish players now that are going to colleges in America and maybe coming back really good, really well-rounded players, and they're coming back to help their club teams, which is a really good model for the league. I feel going forward is to really encourage the players that when they go to America, listen, if you're thinking about coming home, or if you finish your 4 years and you've got a degree and you want to get a job in something, let us know and we might be able to get you a job, and maybe look after you as well on the basketball front. And all of a sudden then you have really good, passionate people coming back to their hometowns to play for their home clubs. um Jordan Blunt is obviously a very good example of this year. And I think that's, we've had Dara Kennelly now, who was in America for a few years. He's come back. He came off of probably a bad year and a half of injuries, and he came back to us, and he's been kind of carrying Knox as well. Will be a really important player for us, hopefully in the future going forward. But like, you've Ryan Leonard is out in America, we've Leroy out in America, we've Rapovitis out in America. So, I think it's a really good thing. So these guys are improving it. There's talks of the two Americans coming in next year. I think that would really add to it further. I just think that drives the level through the roof. I think every club has a further chance of improving positions in the league with two pros that are reliable and that we can scout and have good video etc. on. And I just think even in the last year or two, venues, atmospheres have improved. I know we've been probably doing it since we came into the league, and it was probably a bit of a shock to everybody's system. But lights out, smoke machines. They were at it in the cup final this year. Neptune have done a great job in it. We played a game above a Mary. It was the same. Aina have a go with great home crowds, and uh, Vincent's likewise with the away game of Vincent. So I think the whole buzz around basketball is improving, and I think when you bring your kid to a game and there's all this sideshow as well going on, and there's great basketball on the floor, um, and the popularity of the game is rising, it just leads to more and more improvement. And yeah, teams have really come up big this year, and Mary have done a really good job in what they've done, and the show they're running in Galway. We had a huge crowd when we went up to Galway this year and played, and they gave us a good hiding up there. But they're showing that if you put your mind to it, and you fundraise and you run a good club, and you get people through the door by inviting them into more than just maybe a basketball game, that it can really help. So yeah, the league is in a really good place.
Mhm. Throughout your time in the Irish League, who's been the best, I won't say American, best import and the best Irish player you've played with or against? Can you single out one or two that have just been above, a head and shoulders above the rest?
I suppose my own, probably our own point of view, like, Owen Quigley has been a huge, when he came back down from Limerick to us, he's a Swiss Army knife of a player. And um, he can just do a bit of everything, and he's a problem at multiple positions, and a really good defender on top of it. So that kind of multi-dimensional player is really important to us. In our group, pro wise, um, Jared Haynes this year in the cup final, in our game in Mary, he was really hard to stop. Aaron Calixty last year, likewise for us, a team with an out and out kind of point guard that really can push the flow of the game and control the flow of the game is really, really hard to go against. But you go back to the Michael Bonapartes and these guys, like really, really good players that have come into this league. I think probably one of the best Irish players that we played against. Isaac Westbrooks, I think, is a really good point guard that can run a game and control the flow of a game and is a good leader and dictator. But there's so many of them out there now. You've got the Quins above in Belfast who can shoot the lights out on any given day. Adrian O'Sullivan was in Europe last year, came back. Kyle Horsford's back in the league this year, and probably the most common thread in all this is most of them are point guards. We were lucky enough to have Paul Dick down here for a long time, who's would be up there with the best basketballers in Ireland, whether pros or imports or natural Irish guys. And that level of competition and that level of having to go against these guys every week is really tough. And we've had good years in the league, and we're struggling this year. We're trying to claw our way back into a playoff position, and that's how good the league is at the moment. You've got the Cup and League champions last year, knocked out of the cup and early and to Aina, and then obviously struggling for a playoff spot. So that shows you the level of where teams have gone to. So it's really exciting.
Mm-hmm. When you look back to going, like obviously with the Tigers dissolving in 2009, bringing in the Warriors and setting that up, and I think you said before it was nearly like being a UN peacekeeper. What was the initial step of that? When you said to people, "Oh, look, I'd love to, get the Super League and get a team going in Tralee," were people saying, "Geez, I think you're mad," or were they supportive of it? Did it take a bit of time to get people over the line? Obviously, to bring everyone together to actually meet, but the initial steps, was the idea welcome from day one? Were you seen as crazy, or was it backed?
Probably a bit of both, I would say. I think probably where it started was Mark Burnson, who was coached us in our last year in the Super League when we won the league in 2008, and in the following year, obviously, kind of it didn't go too well. But he had come back to town coaching the Tralee Magic ladies team, and I had gone back playing a bit of stuff to keep fit on the off season with Kerry with St. Brendan's Basketball Club, and we ended up winning the Intermediate Cup that year in the arena, and there was a huge buzz around it. And we had Butters O'Sullivan, our spiritual leader for many years, and Fergal O'Sullivan, who was one of the best 3-point shooters in the country. We had that team kind of coming through with a few young fellas, Paul McMahon, and a few guys like that were good young prospects. And on the Tralee Magic side, they'd Ryan Leonard, Ricardo Leonard's son, and it started being muted about could we start looking at doing it? And then obviously the first thing we had to do was get buy-in from the two clubs. So obviously set up a meeting there. John Dowling, was up for it, and Pat Carey, who was the chairman of St. Brendan's, was up for it at the time. And there was talks about Mark would coach it, and there was a coach there, and Mark was going to be really good with his time. He wasn't going to charge much at all to coach the team. He was just happy to be in Ireland and involved in the game. And yeah, just once you sat down with people and started kind of going through the squads, the players in Tralee, we talked about Owen Quigley's in Limerick, like could we get him back? Ryan Leonard is an under-17 international, but a really good player, one of the best players in that team. He'd be in, Kieran, can you dedicate time to it? And sponsors. And then we obviously went back to Terry O'Brien, who was our chairman, and worked really well with us with the Tigers many years ago, and he seemed to be hungry for something along those lines. So when we got all those people in the room, yes, there was conflict, and there was issues about certain things, what the team be called, what colours will they wear, all kind of very trivial things. But the ultimate message was that I kept harping back to was the reason I wanted to play with the Tigers when I was young is because when I was a 13-year-old, I was in the crowd when they won the league in '96, and Budweiser were the sponsors of the league. That was the whole thing around the lights off, and they were throwing socks to the crowd, and there was smoke machines, and this was like, to people who'd never seen an NBA game or the pre-show to an NBA game, obviously Budweiser had, and some marketing genius had said, listen, you should do this in Ireland, get a few spotlights, get a few smoke machines, get a few pairs of socks and throw them to the crowd, and it was the best thing ever. And just around kind of, could we possibly bring all that and do all that in Tralee on a regular basis? Would we get the crowd? Would we get the numbers back? And it was ultimately that the kids in both of them clubs, and they'd run really good juvenile clubs, but maybe worried about, could they maintain a Super League level for a number of years rather than coming in and dropping down, and that's no good really. Could they come in and be successful and be, not even successful, could we be like a mid-table team and get our feet under us? And you know that was tough getting all that sorted, but once there was buy-in around, obviously Garvey's came in and sponsored us, and look, we can say we want all the sponsors for the Super League teams in Ireland. Without them sponsors, there's probably no league. It's so important, and like, I know you do great work promoting the game, and but just more national broadcasters, more national newspapers, the more they can put pictures of guys with jerseys up on their papers. The Examiner do a great job, but it's just about more publicity wise for these sponsors. But once they came on board with us, we knew we'd have a bit of backing there. We knew we'd the players. Could we go get an American or two and have a go at this? And yeah, that was the jig. That was the real jigs and reels of it. But yeah, it was tough to get it together. But we all kind of knew it'd be well worth it in the end. And even now, when I get into Tralee on a Saturday night, I never take it for granted, because I know how long it was gone for, and I know how hard it was to get it back. And our crowd are really good in the complex, and always come out to support us. Even we've been away for 7 weeks. We're down the bottom of the league, and we're wondering, there's talks in the committee meeting, are the fans going to be here? We've been gone for 7 weeks over Christmas, and we've road games before and road games afterwards. And yeah, we had a huge crowd for the game, and that makes it all worthwhile and makes it worth playing for.
Mm-hmm. You've obviously had a lot of success with the team, but is there a particular moment over the last couple of years where you just maybe stopped and said, this was worth it? Like, is there any particular standout memory for you where it's maybe in the game or you're driving to training and you just go, Jesus, it was worth it, like, just doing this?
Yeah, our first season, Darren O'Sullivan hit a buzzer beater to win the game. And it was bedlam out on the floor, and by his own admission, he wouldn't be a dead-eyed, sharp-shooting three-point shooter. He was our spiritual leader, but he just got that look and had the courage to take it and made it. And the crowd swarmed the floor, and we went wild on the floor. And it was like, at that moment, I was kind of saying, yeah, these kids are going to go home tonight. They're going to want to be Darren O'Sullivan or Fergal O'Sullivan or one of the Americans we had, whether it was Goran Pantovic or whoever it was, Trey Pemberton. Like, I would hope that they would go home and want to be that guy. And I think that's really, a huge credit to all the clubs in Ireland, the Super League clubs and the National League clubs, both male and female, for taking the courage and putting in the time that they're not getting paid for. We're all volunteers in this, and the time that they're putting in to put a team on the floor to maybe inspire a kid to go play and go pick up this great game of basketball that we all love. That is what it's all about. And I think the league that we won, the double header with Marion against, where we came from 7 down with 40 seconds to go above an UCD, to win in overtime with all our pros and all our guys that we'd been paying injured, and it was 5 Tralee kids that won that game in overtime, against an unbelievable basketball club like Marion. And then we had them at home the following night, and if we won, the trophy was ours and the presentation was there. And it was packed. It was packed. Might have been maybe 10 or 12 people over our limit of capacity, but that win, seeing Butters lift the trophy of the Super League trophy, like, the top level award you can go win in the game as a team. And I'm out there looking at a guy who's playing intermediate basketball a few years ago, playing as almost a hobby, to a guy who's really dedicating his life to it. And yeah, that would be for me, the most special moment, I would say, in our time. The way we won it, how hard it was that year, the ups and the downs throughout the year, and we went. I think we won 11 games in a row like that season to go win it, which is no mean feat. So yeah, that was the one where it was. You could definitely say it was all worthwhile.
Obviously, with the Castleiden ladies team, folding there recently, that's another story in itself. But I think Fergal O'Sullivan commented, "Lady Warriors assemble." Is there ever going to be an expansion to the Women's Super League?
Yeah, we're really anxious on that. We were going to try and make a run to try and take that Castle Island project on, but we just weren't in position to. But it's definitely high in the agenda list because the amount of girls playing basketball in Kerry and Tralee is off the charts, and I've no doubt if we'd a girls game on at 5 o'clock and a Warriors game on at 8 o'clock, people's Saturday evenings and nights would be pretty much set in stone in the calendar. And yeah, like I've 3 girls and Fergal has 2 girls, and John Dowling, our coach, has girls. So like it's definitely high in the agenda list about getting it to that point where we can successfully support 2 teams, because we all know what times we're living in. The cost of accommodation, the cost of fuel, the cost of everything is gone through the roof. So and that's why like the sponsors are just so critical to keeping the team alive, and also the people that come and pay at the door. They're coming to enjoy the game, but like we stay on the floor afterwards with all of them, because without them coming, we wouldn't be able to function our team. So every parent that takes their kids to a Super League game in Ireland is supporting the club and supporting them in the very best way possible. And I'd always encourage more people to get your kids down to see your local team playing, because it's fine watching the NBA in the morning if you're a teenager or a young kid, but if you're able to watch, Jared Haynes or one of these guys, go play the game, it's much more accessible. You see them around the town, you see them maybe at your own training session, then you see them on the bright lights of the National Arena or in the Tralee Sports Complex. And we've got a guy, Dre Jackson. He's absolutely a top class player, but he's brilliant with kids. They all love him, and they're all talking to me about him and what's he doing. You see that move, and you see this move, and it's great. And that's from parents bringing the kids down, or giving them the money to go down, or getting them dropped. I remember my mom dropping me and collecting me from those games long ago. And I'm sure she'd better things to be doing with her Saturday night than dropping me to the complex and coming back to collect me, and traffic everywhere, and the pressures of home life and other kids at home. And all the work she did, even at that time, kind of really shaped me to be what I was on a basketball floor, which was a hard working type player. And she had a huge part to play in all that as well.
When the team folded in 2009, obviously football then really took over for the number of years, and then you went back. But was that kind of inevitable that you would have stopped playing basketball to continue playing with Kerry? Was it, how did you balance both in terms of your training load? That's something that came up a lot on Twitter when I put up that we were recording, was training load and managing all of the schedule that you would have had.
Yeah, it was tough coming to the end of that, because uh, like I only got to play in that epic Super League final of 2008, because I was actually suspended. Uh, and you know, like we won that game again. Similar story like the Marion one. We all of our pros were fouled out. It was myself, Mihal Quirk, John T, and but I remember saying, like, I had 25 points that night, Quirky 28 or something, and we wouldn't have won that Super League game if I wasn't suspended and had to play the game with Kerry. That's where it was gone to. And uh, you know, one thing that kills me, and even as a guy that's gone past it and probably both codes now, but leaving a team down to go play with another, or leaving a team down to go coach with another, it's just, I guess, team ethos. In every sport I've played, I would be a kind of a guy that would be very much team first, and never worried about scores or how many points did I get or what did I do, or it was like I really didn't care. I could have the biggest stinker ever, but if we won, I have a big smile on my face going to the dressing room. That's just the way I'm wired. And it was getting to the point in 2009 where it was just, that disappointment was just, it was too much for me. I'd kind of gone, I missed 2 Kerry team holidays or 2 All-Star trips in '06 and '07 to play national cup games with the, and that was fine. But then I was on the other side of it, be back National League, or you could coming into a few big National League games, and the end of the season is on, and I'm missing, and my team are losing, and it's just, it became too hard. But the load of it, like, was it inevitable? It's a good question. It probably was, because the way the game had gone, and the demands, and the gym work, and the training, and you couldn't possibly do both with the same. You could. There's not enough days in the week to make all the trainings and make all the games. Unfortunately, if there was, I would have felt I would have had the energy to do it. But it was just a sheer logistics thing. I was kind of fine with Kerry. I was fine with the basketball up until December, and even then, I remember leaving training in Killarney and going up to Jack and saying, we're playing the Killarney Lakers in the game there, Jack, and training isn't finished, like, and I'm asking Jack to leave Kerry training to go play a basketball game. Like, if you think about it now, if you think about somebody going up to Jim Gavin a few years ago and saying, Jim, I have a basketball game there, I need to shoot down the road, it'd just be unheard of. But I suppose it was just the way I was wired. My team in a big game across the road, I was looking at it like, I'm going to have big games that carry down the summer. We're running around the back of a muck patch pitch in Killarney here. Like, this isn't, I'm going to be still running over in Tralee, running for probably longer. But I guess I had, probably enough about me to go ask the hard question. And in fairness to Jack, he gave me the nod and probably threw his eyes to heaven as soon as I walked out the door. But it was just getting too hard to work. It's getting too hard to work, and unfortunately, I just wasn't able to continue doing both.
What advice do you give to, whether it's teenagers maybe listening? There's a number of teenagers that listen that play both codes, and some of them at an elite level. What advice do you give them, that are in that predicament, whether they're playing maybe just club level, some of them involved in intercounty, maybe Irish teams? But when you're, and it's funny, you say, what do you prefer, but they prefer both, and they're probably the best team, the best player on each team normally, or the top 5 player maybe on each team. What advice do you give to those kids that are trying to balance it now on top of everything else they have, but when they're being pulled in all directions? And we know, and we've discussed it so many times in the podcast, the benefits of crossover skills, but when you get down to the thick of it, to those teenagers, what advice would you give them?
Like, it would say, back yourself, back yourself. If you're good enough, you're going to make it. If you're not, you won't, and that's okay too. But then what happens when you're not? If you won't, if you've given up one, or you've thrown away one to concentrate on one, then you don't make it in that one. You're kind of going back into the other, and how long have you been missing? And it was, for youngsters, I just think they have to back themselves, and they have to be strong, and they have to be able to tell someone, look, I know you've training tonight, but we've a big game with the basketball, and I need to go with my teammates with that game. And you know, eh, the big games don't interact at the same time of year. So, like, that's the good thing about it with basketball and football for youngsters. Like, the big cup games in basketball are in January, the big league games are in league finals are in March or whatever, April. And normally with football, the big stuff is later on in the year, like it is July, August, or whatever, or even June maybe. I think minors might be in April or May now, or the 20s, one of them. But like, it's still all after the basketball, and I. It's a bugbear of mine, this kind of development squads, and you have to give up all the other sports, and you can't play this and you can't play that. I think that's really needs to be looked at. We should be encouraging the kids to play as much as possible and be big enough to say, well, look, were you playing basketball last night? Listen, don't do the football session. Then come down, be around your team, give them water, encourage them, any words of advice. But I don't need you out running around the place. We've a game Sunday, you're going to be in for that. And just, a bit of cop on from coaches in that degree, and to maybe put their own agenda aside and say, this kid is 16, he's on the Irish team, he's a chance to be a minor. But there's a lot of good minors who've never gone on to play senior. And if we force him to give up a game, maybe he finishes minor and has no sport to go to. And if he's no sport to go to, what else is there? It's out, it's hanging out with friends, it's probably getting up to stuff that you don't need to be getting up to, and you're possibly pushing them down a bad road. Whereas, there's no reason at 14, 15, and 16 that these kids have to be picking a sport. I think be strong enough, and if they aren't, and if you're a parent of one of those kids, be strong enough with the coaches. As I said, it doesn't matter if they're going to be good enough, they're going to make it for Kerry or Dublin or Mayo or whoever. They are going to make it if they're good enough. There's nobody going to go, oh, he didn't go to a minor training in January because he had a cup final in the basketball. Well, that was 5 years ago, and he can't play in this All Ireland final. There's nobody thinking like that. It's kind of, they use the, well, look, if you're not a minor, like there's loads of us that weren't really minors. I played one half a game with the minors, but I felt I was good enough to be on that minor team, and I was good enough to back myself. And you know, I had that in school. If you want to play football, if you give up the basketball, I just said no. I'm not giving up basketball. Forget the school football. And our school football team won Curran-Iverees. I wasn't good enough to get on any of those teams, but when I was a Kerry minor, I was good enough to get on the school team. But amazingly, it changed for me. It was okay. It was okay that I was playing basketball at the school now, because Kerry minor last year, he's repeating the leaving cert. He'll be in with us next year, and it's great. And of course, that was the 1 year we'd no success when I was in secondary school, but maybe that was my fault too. But it doesn't really matter when it comes to, if you're an under 20 or a minor and you're good enough, you're going to play. So back yourself in that scenario. And if you're a parent, don't get blinded by the lights of these promises that your kid's going to go all the way if they dedicate themselves in the sport, because it's been proven, the more sport you play, the more robust you are, the more positions your body gets into, the more variation you have in your game, the more tools, the more different skill sets that you have, and playing both can be done, no problem at all.
When you're in the peak of your powers involved in a Kerry senior setup, but when you're looking to improve as a player and as an individual, how do you go about that? Was that ever something you did during your career, where obviously the team is improving and it's the team goal, but improving yourself as an individual, and over your career you've obviously evolved? But how do you go about that within, or even now in Armagh, how do the lads improve individually within a team setup?
Yeah, it's for me, it was kind of like, I always found it really easy in basketball. You have a ball, you have a hoop, you can shoot 200 shots in an hour. You know what I mean? You can get the shots up, you can get 400 shots up in an hour. You can really push yourself, get around cones, and keep the score and see yourself getting better. I think that individual practice is a big one, and something that Dave Hopla, who really is drilling to me, and I've used it since meeting him years ago, is kind of like, are you getting better? I am. How do you know? I don't know. Yeah, you don't know because you're not keeping track of your shots or your pucks or your kicks or whatever it is. So if you can kind of get into that regime of getting that bit of practice away, where you're not really overstretching your body, you're not putting your body through the mill. Bring a friend down, bring a nephew down, bring a niece down, bring a younger brother down. You know, uh, get him to kick the balls back out to you, so you're not flying the legs, running around the pitch, chasing footballs, which is probably a reason I didn't practice as much kicking with the football as I did shooting with the basketball at a young age. But you can certainly find time, to work on your skills, and to work on the skills, I suppose, at a top level that you feel like you need to keep you on a team or get you on a team. You have to find time away from the group to work on that, because within the group, the game is so demanding now, and the challenges and training sessions and trying to get through so much stuff. It might be hard to individualize and work on it. And a simple thing I did for my last few years with Kerry, especially when Eamon was good enough to let me play the basketball with the Warriors for my last 3 years, I'd come back in like a new signing, probably a bit rusty in football, but I used to have a thing where I used to get there early and stay on afterwards. And it might be only 10 minutes or 15 minutes, but you're at training, there's a big bag of balls there, meet one of your buddies down there before training a bit earlier, and just do very basic warm up, get loose, do a bit of stretching, and just get 20 to 40 kicks at the post, and just track the scores, and then maybe set certain areas where you go to, maybe where you need to get the ball in a game, or maybe areas where you missed the shot last week. Can you replicate that? But the most important thing is, can you, like, there's apps now you can get in the phone, but just a little small pad, notepad, and took 10 shots from here, I got 8, took 10 from the middle, got 8, took 10 from my good side, got 10. All of a sudden you've 26 from 30, and you're happy with your day, and then the following day you come along, you get 28. Well, okay, now there's improvement. I see I'm getting better, and that also makes you maybe to want to do it a bit more, because you see the progress, you see yourself getting better all the time. And it's a real simple method. It's not rocket science. um, but certainly something that, in whether it's hurling, football, rugby, basketball, soccer, you can go and do a bit of work in that stuff, but you must track it, because really, if you leave every day and you don't know if you've gotten better or not, you might be a bit slower to come back the next time.
Yeah, that's a really good point. If when you're looking at the game at the moment, and I love asking this question, I nearly ask every guest, but what's the most underrated skill in Gaelic football at the moment? Is there anything that we're overlooking as players, coaches? Is there anything you just see that has a lot of value that isn't really maybe appreciated?
Um, I would say, and Dave Moran just retired, so it's kind of fresh to me. But that level of ability to just go and pluck a ball out of the sky. I think there's more kickouts going along now. I think everybody kind of wanted to see that. I think the mark has worked in that respect. It mightn't have worked so much in the forward aspect. I think they just got it slightly wrong with the whole 20 yards. I was a kind of an advocate. It had to be outside the 45, the ball was kicked, and it had to be inside the 21 where it was caught. It's simple for refs to measure the distance, but more importantly, it creates actually more exciting kind of high balls, not these marks that are coming to the chest and the whole game stops. It's the long ball, which I think hurling had over football for a few years. Was there so much 50-50 ball in hurling that people are on the edge of the seat, the possession is switching over and back, it's exciting. And I think, that level of excitement had been gone out of the game for a few years in football when there was no mark from the kick out. And, I think that ability to go and catch ball above your head is slightly underrated in the game now, but I think it's coming back. I think it's coming back to the forefront of people's minds because they're with teams pressing up now. There's more kickouts that are going long. And can you get up there and catch it and land and mark it and move the ball forward for your team? So that'd be probably one I would say.
Okay. Evan actually had a question from the Instagram story that I put up. He wants to know what's the most important aspects of perfecting your jump and high catch.
I, there's a video that's about 60 years old of Mick O'Connell against the gable of his house down in Valentia Island. And if you want to know to perfect the catch and perfect the time of it, just look up Mick O'Connell on YouTube. Um, Footage is 50 years, 60 years old, but he's pelting the ball off the wall and he's getting his timing and his jump and he's getting it at the highest point every time. And he was known as the most iconic midfielder that was putting knees on people's necks before I'd say even Aussie rules players did it. So again, there's no rocket science to this. This is repetition. If you're a midfielder, can you get down to the field with your goalkeeper, get him pumping out balls, get used to the flight, the timing? Can you get in and can you take a bit of contact? Can you have some fella wrestling with you and get him off you and go catch the ball at its highest point? So I would say very basic. Find a ball wall if there's one in your club, or find a wall where you kick the ball off of. And it was funny because I was doing it with Lola Rose and Indy there down it just at the side of my house here. We've kind of the gable on the house, and um, I work with I work with PSD who do the artificial grass. So there's artificial grass out there. I got a good deal in it. I put it that way. And but basically just having them, I had the goals up against the garage, and I just had them throwing the ball off the wall because they always catch it in their kind of into the bread basket, and I'd be saying, you get extra points if you can catch it above your head. And sure, of course, I say that then, like, your point was worth two if you kicked it over, if you caught it high above your head. And I was just showing them like to throw off the wall. And I think in COVID, I remember doing stuff for people that were working at home or teams, fellas were getting on to me. And it was just that literally that basic running, throwing it off the wall and just trying to get your best jumping leg under you, get your knee up to protect yourself. And also if somebody's backing into you, you might get an extra inch or two up. And then just trying to catch it at its highest point, and it's something, that I didn't emphasize nightly to fellas is when that ball's in the air, concentrate. Like it's a concentration thing because you can just kind of jump and kind of catch it down around here, but you're not going to get it there in a game. There's going to be a fella through the back of you. Whereas if you're up here and you get it, you might have a better chance of securing possession. So get them to look up Mick O'Connell.
Brilliant. Yeah, there's actually something I did with I played up, would have grown up playing with the lads. And I remember we had a coach, but he was kind of really big into soccer. And he gave us this mental cue of when we were catching the ball, because all the lads played soccer and they'd be used to headering the ball. And they could never catch it properly, like above the head. You see the hands behind the head. And it was like head. And then as if you were going up to head it, in the last second it would be hands and you'd stick your hands up, and it worked really well. Was there, and it's actually stood with me to this day, it's probably nearly 10 years ago now, maybe more, but for you during your career with Kerry, was there any mental cues that you use in a game, or even maybe in the basketball now, was there anything that you use on the mental side of things to maybe say switched on? Some people use trigger words, that's become a big thing now. Was that ever part of your skill set?
Uh, it's a good question, Orla. That's a good question. Did I have cues? I think my main cue would have been to just compete. You know, even when I was 80-20 against to win it, like just compete. Like, can you get a fingernail on it? Can you get a claw on it when it falls in the ground? Can you knock it out to somebody that might score? When do you break off? Am I catching it? Am I tapping it to someone? So I don't know if there was a cue around high catching. I used to get excited when the ball was coming. Um, and I used to just try everything in my power to try and get it, and compete for it. And sometimes, as I said, you were never going to get it. But just once your man didn't get it, you never know. There could be a Mike Frank Russell or a Colin Cooper or David Clifford sitting underneath you that could pick it up and bang it into the net just as easy. So it was something that would have been in my head to just fight for every ball. And uh, we played, Ross Bradford was a coach of mine in the basketball, and he used to constantly talk to me about this guy. Chris Thompson was the first American we ever got. He said he's got the quickest second jump he's ever seen. And I said, what? He says, this guy's got the quickest second jump I've ever seen. And I said, what's a second jump? Oh, he said, like, that when you jump to shoot, that you're the first one to realize it might be off. Can you land and jump again quicker than everybody else? And it was something, and from watching Chris that year, he was from Louisiana, from watching him that year, it was something I would have definitely developed and worked on to get that second jump. And the same in football, that if you were, in a battle for a ball and it flicked somewhere, could you be just that quick second quicker to react before the five sweepers would swoop in ahead of me and get the ball? But just trying to get that possession. I wish the mark was there when I played. I would have scored a lot more for Kerry. But it was certainly something I would have really focused on, was just competing for the ball.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. How much, when you speak about your old coach there, how much of currently in your role coaching do you allow your experience as a player, or maybe you think of your basketball coach, your coach, and I find it sometimes, when I'm coaching, I more find it of how I wasn't coaching, how I'd like to be coached. But do you take traits and different things from your old coaches or your playing experience, or do you just keep that completely separate to maybe currently coaching?
No, that'd be probably my whole. That's I'd say that's probably in most coaches, to pick up the good bits, but as you said there, more importantly, to pick up the bad bits. When you were a player and you weren't happy with something, why were you not happy? And um, I've said this before. I played kind of every role for Kerry, from a guy that wasn't on the squads to squads, and all the way up, and so a fairly good understanding of where guys might be at certain stages. And the power of words of encouragement, or a focus point to get them through a tough period. Just go concentrate on scoring, just get scores, work on scores, stay afterwards, get extra shots up. So just trying to kind of use that. But like, Russ, just speaking of Russ, he had a really good thing of really building up the lesser players in the squad, or the younger players in the squad, or the guys that wouldn't be seen to the public as big players. He had a really good way of building those guys up. Um, and what happens is they invest in the group more, and that's hugely important for a group that is not the kind of like the five or six best players in the team, and then your three or four or five guys next down on your basketball squad don't feel like they're going to play, don't feel the love from the coach, don't feel the love from the other players, especially at underage level. They're probably likely to step away from the game. And Ross had a really good thing, and it was so vivid in my mind that you can't lose a game at the start. You can't lose it. Just 40 minutes. If you start a guy who's never started a Super League game or never thought he'd start a Super League game, and you start and you say, listen, I want you to go hard 3 minutes. I want you to get us in this offense. I want you to go after rebounds. his mom and dad are in the crowd. He is buzzing, like, it's taken him by surprise. So, can you do that if you're on your younger team? Can you start a guy that would be nearly what I'm starting? What? Really? It's me. Yeah, it's you. You've been really good in training the last few weeks. Next thing, all the other guys that might be friendly with him that are also not playing go, Jesus, Johnny started. Like, geez, if I try a bit harder, he might start me. And all of a sudden, then you've all these fellas trying harder, which in the end is going to really improve your group. So, no, man, Russ said I was a sponge in his book that time, that I was a sponge for info. I don't have the greatest head, I'll admit that, as in, like, my um I remember I remember very good at sporting trivia and sporting stuff, but I wish I was good with school homework and stuff at remembering things. I think Hillary always says I remember what what I enjoy, or what I like. I remember all that stuff. Anything I don't like, I forget about it very quickly, which might be a bad trait in hindsight. But yeah, I would certainly, look to learn, and have learned, from Jack O'Connor, to Pat O'Shea, who's doing sideline balls with us over in Portugal in the training camp, and he was getting set plays, and the Shays couldn't figure out, what are we doing? Just the ball set plays. It's a sideline ball, just kick it into the pot, this kind of stuff. But you be learning stuff off of all the guys, and obviously Eamon was my last 6 years, and we up and down times, but just huge respect for the way he went about it and how hard he worked at it. And I had a bit with Micheál Donoghue and the Galway Hurlers, and got to see their set up for a year, and now obviously with Armagh, and then I would have had all my club football managers, Wayne Quinlan, who's now coaching the Kerry Miners. Even learning off him up that year that we 2021, we ended up winning the county championship kind of against all odds, and seeing how he handled that and how he handled himself. He couldn't go to one game with COVID, and it was the East Kerry game, and I thought it would devastate him and that he wouldn't be able to function, but he actually went the other way. He went into overdrive. He functioned really well and had us really well set up for the game. And he was so passionate about our team that we nearly wanted to do it. We went out and beat East Kerry with the Cliffords, and all these fantastic players that they have. And so you're learning. You're learning all the time. You really are. I think whether you're a player or you're a coach or whatever part of life you're in, whether you're in a business, you have to be constantly learning, because nobody has it figured out. There's so much capacity to learn, and other people learn in different ways. Like, I'd love to be better at reading books on coaching, or doing more of that stuff. But I just don't have the headspace to do it as much as I want to. But will I watch and listen and try and learn off a guy? Yeah, 100%.
David Clifford is the talk of the country, and absolutely he deserves it, and everyone talks about how good he is and what he can do, and he's just fantastic on the pitch. But you obviously spent a bit of time with him in Tralee. What allows him to perform at the level he is at now, and to the level that he has, skill wise, physicality wise? What allows him to get to that level when you break it down and you get into the nitty gritty of it, like not just the physical attributes, but what allows him to be the best player he is around now?
you know, we run the crossover academy, the camps here in Tralee, and David has been very good to come into the last number of them. Hopefully, we'll get him in at Easter again. But when David would be in talking to them, I'd be saying to the kids, like who wants to be David Clifford, lads? Fine. Everybody's hands up. They all want to be him. And I'm going, okay, guys, do you go on your iPad at home? Yeah, you're going to find it hard to be David Clifford. He didn't have an iPad now. Do you know what he was doing every spare moment he had? Kicking, soloing, dummy solos, dummy hops. And you see them kind of going, oh, okay, he might be right here. And I'm saying, no, it's okay, because we didn't have iPads. And if we had them, we probably would have been on them more. But David's a lot younger than me. But David, how much time did you spend in your iPad or your iPhone? None. None. I didn't spend any time on my phone. And now the eyes open up further with the kids. So, I think what has allowed him to get to the level of where he is, and we must remember he's 24, uh, it is just dedication to practice and getting down. The guy he comes into Tralee Warriors games. I've seen him out. We played Cloglan a few years ago. I saw him in the crowd. You see him at the Munster games. He's at all these sporting things. Yes, because he wants to enjoy, and yes, he probably wants to switch off. But there's no doubt he's learning. There's no doubt he didn't watch fellas doing back cuts for the Warriors and say, hold on a minute, I can, if I'm getting tightly marked, I can do a bit of that. So, he's a guy that constantly learns, but the biggest thing about him is just, he's put all the hours of effort in, and that's what it takes. And I tell the kids all the time, guys, if you want to be this, you gotta get out by yourselves. You can't just go to Stacks or Strand Road and down to Brendan's or down to Tralee Magic training and just think that Tuesday and that Saturday morning is going to do it for you. This has to be, if you want to be as good as this guy, guys, it's an everyday thing. Um, so I would say just his dedication to his craft that none of us or many of us will ever know. Probably outside of David, his brother, and his mom and dad, because they would have been going out in the rain and going kicking down in Fossa and going taking them to games and watching the Gooch with a high skill level and the way Gooch and dummy solo a ball or dummy hop a ball, which Dave has very like Colin would have had. I'm sure he learned something off the ball, those fellas. David's first year with us, Morris Fitzgerald was a selector. I'm sure I saw Dave kicking with Morris afterwards. So, it's that type of dedication to be as good as them guys. And this is the upper echelons of sports stars in Ireland. There's no cheat code. There's nothing to get you there all of a sudden. It is work and practice, and you have to love it. I love the game of basketball probably more than I would have loved the game of football as a kid. I loved playing basketball. You couldn't get me out of the court in school. You couldn't get me out of the back garden at home. Mom said I used to come into school bag and I used to be flung into the corner of the room. And if it was any bit dry, I was out shooting. And, for any kids or teenagers that are listening to this, and if you want to go and play at the top level, you're going to have to find a way to get out there and get more practice in.
I love that there's no cheat code. That's exactly what's come across in every episode. Ray Boyne had a great question. He wanted to know what is the best way to get a message across to players. 1, explaining, 2, showing, or 3, doing, and you can't pick all 3.
Ray's a great guy. He's absolutely brilliant. Of course, he'd come up with a question like that. I would look. It's important when obviously when you're addressing a group and you're trying to get something across to them. I don't think you can do it necessarily. I think you got to show it and maybe use the players with the doing. You know, you have to talk them through it and what you're looking for. But then, you can't be the guy then he's probably right out there doing the 1-2 and kicking it over the bar. Like, you want the 1-2, I want you here, I want you there, I want you to play a pass to him, change a direction, a V cut, come on to whatever leg you want. Maybe get 3 with your good leg, 2 with your bad leg, and then execute the kick over the bar. And it probably is difficult, and but I think when players, if you explain it as best you can and you get them to demonstrate it, I think there's power in that. And then let them at it for a while, let them make their mistakes, and maybe call them in and say, "What do you think, boys?" And hope that they come back with the right answer. And if they don't, then you might have to say, "Yeah, you're right, and you're right. But look, I think I just think you're lifting your heads on the kicks a bit. It's a bit further out. You're a bit anxious. You want to see if it's going over the bar." But like the golfers will tell you, like, you gotta stare at the ground after you make contact, and if you lift your head in it, it's probably not going to go over. So just like little stuff like that. But yeah, it's again, and as I said to you at the start of this, I'm very much a rookie when it comes to the coaching. So I'm really learning the right ways to do it. And as I said, I'm not a guy for sitting down reading coaching manuals or what other guys do and stuff to do and the right way to do it. And that I much prefer to try and go off my experience and the great coaches and managers I've been around, and take what I've learned from them and try and put my touch on it and my spin in it and try and get it across to a bunch of players as best as possible. I think showing enthusiasm is always good, Orla. Be enthusiastic. If I'm standing there and I'm going, right, lads, this is what we're going to do, like, fellas to fall asleep. So, bit of enthusiasm, engage them, keep popping stuff off of them, get them to demonstrate what you've explained, and then let the group at it and see where they go.
Speaking of learning from other people, then, if I was to give you the key to go to any team in the world in any sport, and you could just be a fly on the wall for a week and just learn from anyone in the setup, who would it be and why?
Um, Possibly Ron O'Gara, maybe. Um, I just think he's had a kind of a fascinating journey from being a player, kind of did it all, to then, jumping out of his comfort zone. There was obviously easier roads for him to go in terms of a coaching role. I don't think anybody would have turned him down, a guy like that. He was such a leader on the pitch, spiky, in your face, wanted to win everything. And, he goes to France, then he goes to New Zealand, about stepping out of your comfort zone, like, you know, um, and I was talking to Hillary about going to Armagh first. I was like, Sharon O'Gara went to New Zealand, you know, and so it's a fascinating story. But yeah, I'd like to get in there into that dressing room. No, I'd need I did German in the Leaving cert, not French. But even saying that, I went to Germany to the Champions League final a number of years ago, and I was there going, I did this for 6 years. Why is this like Arabic to me? Like, I don't know the signs. So yeah, maybe if I did French, I'd still need a translator. But no, just I would like to get into his world for a few days, and just see what way he interacts with the group and gets them going. He spoke to us with Kerry a number of years ago, and I was really impressed with him. And I know him, like, a few times here and there, and he's just a good guy.
Yeah, that's going to be the quote of the podcast. I'm going to Armagh. Ronan O'Gara went to New Zealand. There was a great clip from the camp. I think it was maybe Easter last year. There was a young lad. He must have been about 8 or 9, but he did this amazing spin move, and he looked the most natural. Just the way he carried the dribble, and it was just incredible. But he was wearing, the best thing was, he was wearing a GA jersey and GA shorts. There's a question here from Derek about um, handling the ball and kind of having control over the ball. Do you think basketball players have better handling than GAA? And if yes, how can GAA players get up to the level of basketball, like that kid that's able to control the ball in the spin and make it look so natural?
Yeah, I do think that's the case, and it probably stems from, even at our camps, like, they all have a ball. We tell them, bring all the balls. Now, is it a headache to hear 90 balls bouncing around the court? Balls everywhere. Put your balls away and go get your balls. It is, but like, the more they the ball in their hand, the better. And no, like, don't get me wrong, no, the coaching at underage level in GAs, obviously it's improving all the time and getting better and better, and will get better and better. But it's the small sided games are becoming big now. And kids sometimes prefer the big games and 12 on 12 and over the bar and under the bar. But the more small sided stuff you can do, the more times they touch the ball. So, like, if you were to track it under 12's training session and you start your game at the end of it, some player could touch the ball 50 times, but another player could touch it twice. So that fella's handling can't be improving. You know what I mean? So, but in basketball, there's only five. You only have a limited amount of options. So everyone's touching the ball a bit more. Everyone's getting the ball fired at them. Everyone knows where to get it away. Everybody needs to see the next pass. So, like, basketball's 5 on 5. Um, we all know the size of a basketball court. There's no problem in marking out a small GA pitch in that size and putting two small goals in it, and getting real high intensity games for 3 or 4 minutes at a go, where they're up, down, up, down, up, down, hand passing only. So it's all hands, it's all catching, it's all passing, it's all vision. So yeah, I would say it is. It's a big thing we would focus on the camps from when they come out of the basketball hall. So we bring the kids out of the basketball hall. I'd send all the kids on the football pitch into the basketball hall for the last hour of camp with Fergal. He'd send all the basketballers out to me, and it'd often be small sided stuff that we would do in terms of the games, and then the skills, kicking, because some of them might play football at all, so you have to demonstrate the basics, and then you have some of the basketballers coming out who are obviously playing a huge amount of football as well. So, and I always tell people, with young people, like, if there's a really good kid in your group and he's brilliant and he's way better than everybody else, like, challenge him every week to become a better team player, and say, Orla hasn't scored. No, she hasn't scored in 3 weeks down here training. I want you to go all the way into her today, draw the defence, slip her turn, see if she can kick it over the bar. And if she doesn't, and if she doesn't get a point, maybe pull her aside afterwards, just go through it with her, because it's so much more powerful coming from a kid to a kid, especially the best kid at the camp, or the best kid at the team, is spending time. So that's a good thing, I think, for coaches to focus on, is because often the best kids will hang out together and the weaker kids will hang out together, and that's just life. That's been going on for 100 years. But can you try and break that divide, and empower the best kid or the better kids to go make somebody else better in your team? Because it could be that one word in the year that all of a sudden that person, instead of going home and feeling bad about themselves and sitting in front of the iPad or the TV, now is going out practicing what the best kid told them to do to get better. And, a few weeks of that, a few months of that, and that kid is getting better all the time. And, when they're 12, they're 12, but now all of a sudden, come minor, that kid could be the best player. And the best kid, as we often see underage, because they're bigger, stronger, and faster, mightn't be the best anymore. But, that common ground will always be shared, and that bit more friendship would be always remembered, I'm sure.
Absolutely. There's actually a brilliant clip. I'm going to send it to you after this about it. I think it's a rugby camp, and it's a kid talking to a kid, and it's very like that. It's the best clip I've ever seen on Twitter, but I'll send it to you. But I want to ask you, in terms of your playing career, at the moment, when you look at the game and split it into pillars, you have the physical side, the tactical side, the mental side. When you break it down as percentages, starting out with Kerry in 2004, 2005, what was it like at that stage to now? Like, obviously the game has become so tactical, but and so physical. Like, obviously the guys are at the moment are just genetic freaks, because they are genetic freaks. People say they aren't, but they are. How has that evolved, and what's the current lay of the landscape with GAA in terms of those percentages and the pillars?
And you said the pillars are, what did you say?
Sorry, so I've just picked physical, tactical, mental. Even you can throw skill, you can throw in a different pillar yourself. Whatever you think are the most important pillars.
Yeah, I think, when we came into Kerry, Pat Flanagan was top coach, really top strength and conditioning, and I remember him teaching us how to sprint properly, what was he doing sprinting properly? But obviously he was doing what, it's not rocket science. The more you run fast, the faster you be. Like, you know what I mean? It was just, he was trying to get us to work on little things like technique, but he kind of funky ways, but it engaged us, and we tried it. And did it make us faster? It did. And did it make some of us that did it properly? Yes. But the physical side, he was really pushing the gym. And what I would say is, there would have been maybe 3 different pods. There would have been guys that were loving the gym and Pat Flanagan and getting strong and being in shape. And then there was a kind of core to guys in the middle that would, we do weights. Weights are paying the hole, and I'll go on and do them and just keep everybody happy. And then you had guys that were like, weights, I'm 28. I've been playing for Kerry for this long. I don't need weights. And depending on who you were friendly with along that bracket, unfortunately for me, maybe some of the guys I was friendly with were kind of like, weights, So like the physical weight. No, I was 6'4" and probably always, but like, it's the one regret I have that I didn't. When you see, the shape guys are in now, even on my own Stacks team last year, like fellas that are in with Kerry, like Dylan Casey and Joe O'Connor, like, just the boys come in Kerry singlets, like, and it's nearly embarrassing. I wouldn't even go near them. They're just absolutely monsters, like, and I'm kind of going, said, lads, you're some animals, no, like, looking at them. So I would say that the physical thing and the gym side is far more outweighed now than maybe it would have been back then. The tactical thing is poles apart also. The game was simpler. Like, if people were, hunting in packs and getting bodies back, it was like big news, and Jesus, what are they doing? And it was a bit more open. There was a bit more one-on-one. There was a bit more beat your own man. No, I wish I got a bit longer with that. I used to always slag the bomber and say, Bomber, you always only had one man to beat. Jesus Christ, we could all do that. But, like, weren't back there with sweepers and blankets and this kind of stuff. So, but it was definitely something that, like, the tactical side is definitely come on, like restarts, like just start with kickouts. Like Jesus, I remember when Jack O'Connor was trying to get kickouts done, and Diarmid O'Connor, and he was trying to get Diarmid to kick it out to that side and kick it out to this side. And Diarmid was flinging them out, and they were going through the wire in Fitzgerald Stadium and out over the sideline over there. And I remember him saying one time he was coming out with the ball and he was talking under his breath, and he was saying, "I'll show him fucking kicking it to the sideline." He put down the ball, he went back about 20 yards, and he ran and kicked this ball like he hated it, like it was the worst thing in the world, and drove it about 60 yards. And Jack blew the whistle and came in and was giving out. But like that was just basics, like dinking it out here, dinking it out there. Like the keepers now are the quarterbacks of many of their teams now. Like, and it's such a demanding position, so much pressure on. These restarts are so important. You have to be so good with them. Teams are pressing you. Teams are doing this. They're dropping off. They're pushing up. They're boxing. Like, there's so much going on. So, like, the tactical side is also way ahead now. And to be truthful, even though it might be focused on as much basic skills, but just naturally the way the game has gone and the way fellas evolved, the skill, like, you couldn't say the skill was higher 10 years ago than it is now. Like, the guys are just, the game and the players are evolving all the time. Of course, there was the Gooches and there was these fellas back in the day, and that had Peter Canavan and Benny Coulter, Stevie McDonald, guys, unbelievable skill. But now the guys with unbelievable skill are big and strong. Like, it's so, of course they're better. Of course they're a bit more powerful. Of course they're able to fend guys off. Like the Clifford this year, winning the game, winning the ball against Freeze Kerry on the ground, and he's rolls and he gets up and he's pushing a guy off, and like it's evolving. So, to be honest, I think most aspects of the game have evolved, and if you were to put, I'm not even sure about percentages on them. I think it's pretty much, I wouldn't say it's far off 25, 25, and 25, and 25, in terms of working on the skills, working on the tactical elements of the game, making sure your conditioning is right, and then obviously that when you're in the gym, that you're doing the right weights and doing them correctly. Like I said, it was a pile of us back in the day. As much as they showed us, it was much looser than it would be today in terms of gym. Like, we're given a program and off you go, and fellas would be shown right, but then you'd be in by yourself. You'd be watching some other fella, you'd be trying to do it, and then, geez, he's doing 60 kgs or he's doing 80 kgs. I better try that. And then technique is all over the place because you're just trying to match the guys next to you. So, I would say that where the game is at now is at a level that we've never seen, and it's fellas will always want to win All Ireland, so it's going to keep evolving.
Mm-hmm. That was actually something that came up on Twitter. It was a question came in about does forward play exist anymore? And I'll probably change it slightly to a question I asked Blaine Mackin a couple of months ago. It was, have we lost the flair for the game? And she had a really interesting answer. But do you think we've lost this sort of instinct? Like, I loved watching the Gooch. I think Clifford is one of them. I love watching him, just these things off the cuff that he does. And Blaine was kind of saying, well, it's great for maybe yourself, Orla, to watch these things off the cuff, but in terms of percentages and because we were trying to retain possession, people are going to move away from it. What's your take on it? Do you want to see more flair for the game? Is it like her answer of saying, keeping the possession and keeping the percentages high?
I think you probably need to look at a bit of both. Like, you have to take risks that may be worth it, and be okay with them not coming off. But of course, like, you like, as I said, on the tactical element of it, there's guys out there in media that used to work for media, and they think the beautiful game is gone, and this kind of, like, they're getting everybody behind the ball. Well, they're not actually getting everybody behind the ball. They're just actually following their men, because now backs are going, well, I'm going to get in the transition here. I'm going to go up the pitch, and actually, I've done more than just mark people all my life. I'm a good footballer as well, and I'm going to exploit that, and I'm going to put you under pressure by taking you up the pitch. You're a corner forward. You'd actually love to stay here. Well, I'm going to go this way. And most of it is actually forwards following backs, whereas people out there that wouldn't be in tune with the game are kind of going, they're blank, everybody's behind the ball. And yeah, that happens sometimes. Of course, if you've got a lead, you can't go, you're not going to be winning by 4 points and pressing all the way up the field, leaving yourself open for goal. Like, there needs to be just a small bit of more awareness around that. But I think the flair will always be there. I don't think you could say stuff that Clifford has done or Con Callahan has done or players have done in the last number of years at an incredibly high level. The likes of Lee Keegan, these guys have done stuff with flair that is absolutely top class. So I think flair will be there, and it'll always be there, and there'll always be a place for it. And I think if like going back to the whole thing about practicing, if you put in the work and you've earned the right to take that shot on, but it's kind of outside the zone or it isn't. But if you put in the effort and put in you've every right to take it, because you have to know the difference between a 20-yard mark being kicked over the bar and the reaction that gives your fans versus some fella coming onto a ball from 40 yards and hitting the outside of the boot and splitting the post. That's like worth 2 points to the team, because the crowd rise, your teammates rise, and of course there's a risk it'll go wide, but if that player is earned the right and has worked hard enough and he's kicking and you've seen him do it in training and he misses it, okay, unlucky, let's go, let's get the ball back. It can't be too much of a big deal.
Okay, interesting. Another question in from the Armagh fans Twitter page. Thought this was interesting. Hey guys, Kieran, after the disappointing of losing on penalties to Galway last year in the quarter final, what was the message afterwards to pick the boys up for this season?
Look, look, whatever about that dressing room, but as a player, there is nothing that you can say after the loss in Croke Park that ends your year that's going to be fellas are going to be out the door going, yeah, I think next year's going to be great. It's more thanking the players for their efforts and commitment, and maybe the players thanking the management. Likewise, it's the end of the road. You're going to go and have a few pints as a team, but it's the end of the road. It's maybe the chats that happen in the following weeks or the messages that you start. Because everybody needs a bit of a mental break after the disappointment. But I always find once the next game was on, or if you lost in the semi-final and the final was on, once that was over, you'd start drifting texts here and there to fellas, and next year we can do this, or next year we can look to do that. So I don't think there's anything really you can say to a team that can heal the pain of where they are at that moment. And they don't want to know about next year. They don't want to know about next week. They don't want to know about anything. They just want to probably stick close to their teammates and their family, and just try and get through that, that mourning period that we go through after those big losses.
What was more motivating? Was it leaving Croke Park with Sam Maguire or after a big win or Munster title, or leaving being knocked out or losing a final? What was it for you?
Well, we didn't need too much motivation. I was in terms of coming back the following year to try and do something. I was kind of, whether we won or lost, I'm kind of the internal optimist anyway. So I always felt that we were going to have a go and do well. But obviously when you win it, you've got that pressure on to defend it. I only did that once in my Kerry career. The other three, we didn't win it. We didn't win it on the back of it, because it's a long year, and in Kerry you've got the county championship, you've intermediate championship, you've junior championship, then you finish them, then you go into the Tralee championship, the West Kerry championship, North Kerry championship, South Kerry championship. Games are on St. Stephen's Day, and next thing you're getting knocked on the door to come back into training. So it was a long year after you won an All Ireland Kerry, because of what came afterwards. Not so much what maybe the players did. It was just the circumstances of it, and the amount of games that we have down here in the divisional leagues are really pride of place. It's hard to explain to people how important the South Kerry Championship final is to someone from Drummond Pearsons or Carsavine or Skelly Grangers, and likewise above in North Kerry, and you stand in St. Stephen's Day and you have 3,000 or 4,000 people watching Paul Galvin with Finuig against Brendan Guiney with Listowel, and this is going to be an absolute, and that is non-stop from the All Ireland final, from the disappointment or the victory, or when you leave Croke Park, whatever stage it is. The boys in the club, they don't have time for you to feeling sorry for yourselves. You have to get back in, you have to go again. So it's yeah, look, it's exciting when you get any call to be a part of any county squad. I can imagine, to represent your own people, representing your family, and I don't think it needs more. It shouldn't need much motivating to be a part of the group. Um, that would be my feeling anyway.
Okay, that's interesting. I don't want to retire you from the Warriors or from Stacks, but an interesting question here from Farouk. He wanted to know, when it's all said and done, what do you want to be remembered for? I suppose I think maybe when you're walking away from playing, I get the sense even when you finish playing, you're still going to be involved in sport, whether it's coaching or on committees, and until for the next number of years. But when your playing days are finished, what do you want to be remembered for, Kieran?
I think someone that just gave their best for whoever they were playing for. Yeah, I think really just giving my best for my team to try and help them win, whether that was basketball with Stacks or basketball with the Warriors or Tigers or Ireland or whatever. And obviously in the football, playing games, interprovincial games, playing with international rules, you know, I would have been doing my best to win them games and I knew I wasn't the most skilled, but certainly competitiveness and will to win. I would have never been found wanting, and I probably have uh, my own fans, whether whatever sports they'd be, would have a real soft spot for me, and maybe others wouldn't, and that's probably why. But yeah, no, just being remembered that as a fella that really tried to give it his best, and I would say I could have been better away from the court in terms of sleep and weights and nutrition. But just put me in between white lines and throw up a ball, and yeah, I'm gonna after it. I'm going after it hard.
Yeah. Very good. I'm going to wrap it up with the sideline seven. You've been so generous with your time, but we're going to fly through it. It's the same seven questions at the end of every episode. Question one, Kieran, what is your favourite quote? Are you a bit of a quotes man, or do you stay away from them?
I think my favorite one is the Jordan one about that I've missed, 9,000, and like I like the way he goes through about, the process of dealing with all the disappointment. So yeah, Jordan's quote on all the shots he missed and all the game winners he missed and the layups he missed, and I like that one.
Okay, very good. Question two, what's the best sporting event you've been to? And you can pick one as a fan and one as a player.
At the Gaelic grounds in 2014 against Mayo, the replay was the best one as a player. And I would say as a fan, maybe the Champions League in 2012 over in Munich against Bayern Munich when Chelsea won it with the just the drama at the end of that game, like it was such an awful game, and it was we were 1-0 down with 2 minutes to go, and just that excitement, the drama from that point, um, from that point to the end was mega.
Okay. Question three, what's been the biggest setback or challenge so far in your career, and how did you react to it?
Um, I think that osteopubis injury I had was probably my most challenging because it was kind of it wasn't that much of it around then. Or maybe I don't know. I'd never heard of it before anyway until I got it. But like it's obviously a big thing now, more and more for whatever reason. I don't know why that's happening, but um, that and not being able to play the way I wanted to play, and not being able to move the way I wanted to move. The realization after playing a club game when I was walking out trying to I was lifting my right leg with my right hand at the back of my knee, like to lift it forward. That's how sore I played the game, of course, like a clown in a county league final, and then yeah, back in 14 and not able to shake it no matter what I was doing. Jarkeen worked ferociously hard with me. I was up and down to Sean Boylan. We were trying everything, and eventually the guys got it right for me, and then obviously 14 went on and had the year that I had. So that was probably my biggest disappointment, and how I reacted to it was probably just staying going. Stay. Don't get me wrong. There was mornings I went out to physio to Jerkeen one morning. I never got up in the bed. I walked around his table and he sat down while I was ranting and raving about this and what are we going to do and what am I going to do, and next thing I was like fuck it, Jerry, I have to go to work, and we had a bit of a laugh about it the next day, but like that's where I was. That's where the frustration was. I was walking into Kerry training, and they were looking at me, kind of going, "Where's the crutches? Where's the sling? Where's the brace? Like what's going on?" Like, and I'm like, "Look, lads, I just can't. I can't run at top speed without the stabbing pain in that area of the body." And I was just like, that was definitely the most frustrating. Yeah.
Okay. On the flip side then, what's been your biggest achievement on or off the pitch/court?
On the court, I would say I'd be doing the double last year with the Warriors, and doing it with Fergal as our captain, and the journey we've been on in the last 6 or 7 years. So that, and likewise I did double in the GA that year too with the Stacks, but it was the championship run, and it was Wayne Quinlan had managed us with Stacks for 5 years, and then left, and then Stephen Stack came in and took us on and did a really good job with us, and we won a championship in Stephen's second year. And Wayne had put a huge amount into that team, and he had a huge sense of unfinished business, and that he was delighted for us, and gave us a lovely voice message before that first final in 14. But he came back, and he had another go at it, and we had a few disappointing days in that, and you had COVID in there and the whole hassle of that. But yeah, to come out of the back of that and be back in front of full crowds, and to finally get it done, and the run we went on, we won a penalty shootout in the semi-final. We beat the famous South Kerry in the quarter-final, beat East Kerry in the first round, and then our local rivals in the final. And we'd beaten Kinmare in the club championship game that year too, at the death with a last-minute goal. So I would say they'd be my two highlights.
Very good. Looking back, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Go to the gym and stop making excuses. Stop following Darrell Shea.
If you could pick, if you could have a dream dinner guest and you can open up the table to a few people if you want, who would it be and why?
Jordan, 1. Rodman, 2. And maybe Phil Jackson. I'd like a little Bulls, reunite the Bulls, and sit there and just listen to the stories, and pick Phil's brain on his Zen type of coaching. And yeah, I think you'd have all bases covered. I'd say Phil would be funny; he'd be out there. Rodman is obviously going to keep you entertained during a meal, and yeah, just to sit next to Michael Jordan, if he didn't open his mouth, I'd be quite happy.
Brilliant. Last question before I let you go. If your life was a book, what chapter would this be called?
The learning phase.
The learning phase. Love it. Kieran, thanks a million for coming on the podcast, and you're so generous with your time. Best of luck with everything moving forward, Warriors, Armagh, everything, and I'm sure I'll see you soon.
Thanks all. Keep up the good work. All right, Ben.
A big thank you to Kieran for joining me on the podcast today. I thoroughly enjoyed our chat, and I personally took a lot away from it. Also, a big thank you to our sponsor, Chin Up Goggles. You can find their social media links and website links in the description box below. If you are enjoying the podcast, please do leave a rating and a review over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as it does help the show grow. Thank you for listening.